The first thing you hear is not the engine, it is laughter, sharp, careless laughter, echoing across the dusty North African road as a column of German tanks rolls forward under the burning sun. It is April 1942, somewhere west of Tobruk, and the Afrika Korps believes it owns this land. The convoy moves with confidence, engines steady, tracks grinding sand into fine powder. To the German tank crews, this is routine. Another supply run, another quiet stretch of desert. And somewhere ahead, hidden behind low ridges and broken terrain,
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
something small is waiting. Something they have already decided is not worth fearing. You can almost feel the heat pressing against the steel hulls, the air shimmering, the horizon empty. But it is not empty, and in less than an hour, that laughter will stop. The men inside the German Panzer III tanks had reason to feel superior. They had seen the British and American light tanks before. Thin armor, small guns, fast but fragile. The kind of machine you mocked before you destroyed it. Reports from earlier encounters had painted a clear picture. The M3 Stuart, as the Americans called it, was quick but weak. Its 37mm gun struggled against German armor. Its silhouette was high, its armor thin. German crews had nicknamed it Tommy Cooker, suggesting it burned easily when hit. In their eyes, it was not a serious threat. It was something you chased down, not something you feared. But war has a way of punishing certainty. Earlier that morning, Lieutenant James Carter of the U.S. 1st Armored Division had studied the map spread across his lap. The desert around him looked endless, but the terrain held subtle features. Small ridges, shallow depressions, rocky outcrops, places where a tank could disappear if positioned carefully. Carter had received intelligence from British reconnaissance units about a German convoy moving through this sector. Fuel trucks, ammunition carriers, and a small escort of Panzer IIIs, not a large force, but enough to be dangerous. His orders were simple: harass, disrupt, and withdraw. But Carter saw an opportunity for something more precise. He commanded a small group of M3 Stuart light tanks, no more than 6 vehicles. On paper, they were outmatched. The German guns had longer range, their armor was thicker, but Carter understood something the enemy did not expect. Speed, positioning, and surprise could turn weakness into strength. The Stuart could move faster than a Panzer III. It could reposition quickly, and most importantly, it could strike where the enemy was not looking. By mid-morning, Carter's unit had taken position behind a series of low dunes overlooking the narrow track the German convoy would use. The desert was quiet, almost too quiet. Inside the tanks, the crews checked their weapons, adjusted their optics, and waited. Sweat ran down their backs despite the ventilation. The metal hull amplified the heat. Every second stretched. Every sound mattered. You can almost feel the tension inside those cramped turrets, the smell of oil and dust, the faint vibration of engines idling at low power. Carter's plan depended on timing. He did not want to engage the German tanks head-on. That would be suicide. Instead, he aimed for the vulnerable part of the convoy, the supply trucks, the fuel carriers. Without them, even the strongest tank force could not continue. He would strike fast, cause chaos, and disappear before the German tanks could organize a response. Around 10:15 a.m., the first sign appeared, a faint dust cloud on the horizon. Through binoculars, Carter could make out the shapes forming within it. Trucks, tanks. The convoy was approaching exactly as predicted. He lowered the binoculars and spoke calmly into the radio, giving final instructions. Engines were brought to readiness. Guns were aligned. Safety catches were checked. No one spoke more than necessary. The moment was close. As the German convoy moved into the kill zone, the mood inside their vehicles remained relaxed. Some crews had their hatches partially open to let in fresh air. A few tank commanders scanned the horizon casually, not expecting anything unusual. The desert had been quiet for days. The idea of an ambush from light tanks did not cross their minds. To them, the biggest threat would have been British artillery or aircraft, not a handful of American Stuarts. Then everything changed in seconds. Carter gave the signal. The first Stuart surged forward from behind the dune, its engine roaring as it crested the ridge. Almost instantly, the others followed, emerging from concealment like shadows becoming solid. The sudden movement caught the German convoy completely off guard. For a brief moment, there was confusion, shapes appearing where there had been none, engines revving where silence had ruled. The first shot came from Carter's tank. A sharp crack, the recoil pushing through the hull. The 37mm shell slammed into a fuel truck near the center of the convoy. The impact was immediate and violent. The truck erupted into flames, a column of black smoke rising into the clear sky. Within seconds, more Stuarts opened fire, targeting the trucks and soft vehicles with precision. The German crews reacted, but not as quickly as they needed to. Their initial assumption that these were weak, easily defeated tanks delayed their response. Some tank commanders hesitated, trying to assess the situation. Others shouted orders, but the sudden chaos disrupted communication. The convoy, tightly packed on the narrow track, became a trap. Carter's tanks did not stop moving. They fired on the move, weaving between bursts of speed and brief halts to aim. The Stuart's strength was not its gun, but its agility. It could reposition faster than the German tanks could track. Each American tank focused on a specific target, creating overlapping fields of fire that amplified their effectiveness. Within the first minute, several trucks were burning. Ammunition carriers began to explode, sending shrapnel and debris across the convoy. The German Panzer IIIs finally began to respond, rotating their turrets, searching for targets. Their guns were more powerful, but they needed clear shots. The smoke, fire, and movement made that difficult. One German tank fired, its shell cutting through the air and striking the sand just behind a Stuart. The explosion threw up a cloud of dust, but caused no damage. Another Panzer managed to hit one of the American tanks, the impact ringing through its hull. The armor held, but the crew inside felt the shock. Still, they kept moving. Carter shifted his focus. The initial strike had achieved its purpose. The convoy was in chaos. Now came the second phase. He directed two of his tanks to flank left, using the terrain to approach the German tanks from an angle. The remaining tanks continued to harass the convoy, keeping the enemy distracted. The flanking maneuver was risky, but it worked. The German tanks, focused on the immediate threat in front of them, did not notice the movement until it was too late. The Stuarts appeared on their side, firing into weaker armor sections. One Panzer III took a hit near its track, disabling its movement. Another was struck in the rear, smoke beginning to seep from its engine compartment. Inside the German vehicles, the mood had shifted completely. The earlier laughter was gone, replaced by urgency and confusion. Orders were shouted, but coordination was breaking down. The convoy, meant to move as a unit, was now a collection of isolated elements reacting individually. Carter knew he could not stay too long. The longer they remained, the higher the risk. German reinforcements could arrive. Air support could be called. He checked his watch briefly, then gave the signal to withdraw. But withdrawal did not mean retreat without purpose. The Stuarts continued to fire as they disengaged, maintaining pressure on the convoy. They used their speed to pull back in a controlled manner, never presenting an easy target. Within minutes, they were moving away from the engagement zone, disappearing back into the desert. The German convoy was left burning. For a few long seconds after the Americans disappeared, there was a strange silence. Not complete silence, because the fires were still crackling and ammunition was still cooking off, but a kind of stunned pause. German tank commanders stood half-exposed in their turrets, scanning the empty horizon where the attackers had vanished. You can almost feel the disbelief settling in. This was not how it was supposed to happen. One of the surviving Panzer III commanders, Oberleutnant Karl Fischer, later wrote in his field notes that the attack felt too fast to fully understand. He described seeing flashes of movement, hearing impacts, and then suddenly being surrounded by fire and smoke. He admitted something rare for a veteran tanker. He had underestimated the enemy, not their courage, but their method. Back inside Carter's unit, the mood was controlled, but not relaxed. No cheering, no loud celebration, just short confirmations over the radio. One tank reported minor damage. Another confirmed all crew were safe. Carter listened carefully, making sure no one was missing. In desert warfare, survival after contact was just as important as victory during it. As they pulled farther away, the terrain swallowed them again. The same dunes that had hidden them before now protected their escape. Engines stayed low. No unnecessary movement. They knew the Germans would be alert now. The element of surprise was gone, at least for today. You can almost imagine Carter glancing back one last time through his periscope, seeing the thin column of black smoke rising far behind. Not as a symbol of triumph, but as confirmation. The plan had worked. That afternoon, under the harsh North African sun, German recovery crews moved carefully through the damaged convoy. Burned-out trucks, twisted metal, scattered supplies. Fuel, one of the most valuable resources in the desert war, had gone up in flames within minutes. Ammunition losses would take time to replace. And time, in this campaign, was everything. Officers gathered near the damaged tanks, speaking in low, serious tones. This was no longer a minor nuisance. This was a tactical problem. If small, fast units could strike like this and disappear, then every convoy was vulnerable. Every movement needed more protection. Every route needed reconsideration. The laughter from the morning felt distant now, almost embarrassing. What made the ambush effective was not luck. It was understanding. Carter had not tried to fight the German tanks on equal terms. He had avoided their strengths and targeted their weaknesses. This was something many early Allied commanders struggled with. But by 1942, lessons were being learned quickly. The Stuart, despite its limitations, had one clear advantage: speed. On open desert ground, it could reach around 58 kilometers per hour. That speed allowed it to choose when to fight and when to leave. Combined with good coordination and clear communication, it became more than just a light tank. It became a tool for disruption. In the weeks that followed, similar tactics began to appear more often. Small units striking supply lines, hitting fast, then vanishing. Not every mission succeeded. Some ended badly. But the idea was spreading. German commanders, including those under General Erwin Rommel, began adapting as well. Convoys were reorganized, escorts were strengthened, reconnaissance became more aggressive. But adaptation takes time, and in war, even a small delay can be costly. Back in the American lines, Carter's report was filed with careful detail. Time of contact, number of enemy vehicles, ammunition used, damage observed. It was not written like a story. It was written like a record. But between the lines, something was clear. Confidence was growing. Not overconfidence. That would be dangerous. But belief. The belief that even against a well-trained and well-equipped enemy, smart tactics could level the field. You can almost step into that moment as a viewer. Imagine sitting inside that Stuart, the cramped space, the constant noise, the heat that never leaves. Imagine knowing that your armor will not save you if you are hit directly, and still moving forward because the plan depends on speed, not protection. That is where the real tension lives. Not just in the explosion or the ambush, but in the decision to act despite the risk. As the North African campaign continued through 1942, battles grew larger and more intense. El Alamein would soon become a turning point. New tanks, new strategies, new commanders, but small actions like Carter's ambush remained part of the larger picture. Because wars are not decided only by massive battles, they are shaped by moments like this: quick decisions, calculated risks, seconds where everything changes. The M3 Stuart would continue to serve in many roles: reconnaissance, flanking support, fast strikes. It would never replace heavier tanks, but it was never meant to. Its value was different, and when used correctly, it could do exactly what it did that April morning: surprise the enemy, break their rhythm, and disappear before they could respond. Years later, veterans from both sides would remember moments like this more clearly than large battles, not because of scale, but because of impact. The shock of the unexpected, the sudden shift from control to chaos. And if you return to that first moment, that echo of laughter rolling across the desert, it feels different now. Not just careless, but fragile. Because in war, confidence without awareness can vanish in seconds. On that road west of Tobruk, it did. And in its place came something else: respect. Not for the machine itself, but for the way it was used. Because in the end, it was not the size of the tank that decided the outcome. It was the way it moved, the way it struck, and the moment it chose. And that is what turned a light tank into something far more dangerous than anyone in that convoy expected.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.